Hey everyone, DisturbedShadow here, bringing you my first album review of 2015. Now, there really hasn't been any new albums out yet since the year just started, so I'm going to start off by starting off reviewing another discography. Now, the last one I did, and the first one I did, was the In Flames discography, which is very long, so this time I decided to do something short from a newer band, which is, of course, one of my new favorite bands, which I got into very early last year, around this time last year, which is the Canadian progressive metal band Threat Signal, which I just really got into last year, and I've been dying to do this discography for a while, and since they're going to be putting out a new album some point this year, I believe, I want to get it out of the way beforehand so I can go through this and then jump right into the new album when that one comes out. Now, anyway, if you haven't heard of Threat Signal, they're sort of a melodic death metal band, metalcore hybrid band with djent style, and they play progressive metal. It's pretty cool music, and I really haven't heard anything quite like them. I mean, there's a lot of different djent bands out there, but I believe that's how you pronounce that. But they each bring something, or a lot of them bring something new to the table. There's a lot that kind of sounds samey, but Threat Signal is one of the ones that sort of stands out as a unique one. So I felt like I really wanted to do this discography. So let's jump in and start off with their debut album, which came out back in 2006, entitled Under Reprisal, which is one of my personal favorite albums from them. I mean, they only have 3 albums out right now, but this is one of the best ones, in my opinion. So let's just dive in and talk about some of the good tracks on this album. So the first track I want to talk about is the opening track titled Rational Eyes, which is actually the first song I ever wrote. And this song just starts off really heavy and just gets you right into this album. It's just heavy, crushing, and then it's just really heavy with screams and stuff, and then it pulls into a more melodic chorus that really just pulls you into the song. It's just, there's a lot of power to that chorus. And then at the end, it mixes things up and does something completely different, where it just gets really, really heavy again, and then it just closes out with a bang. Track number 2, As I Destruct, this is another personal favorite off this album. It sort of starts off very heavy in the beginning, and then it goes to this, it pulls back a bit for a more melodic verse type thing. And then it gets heavy again, and then they do another similar part like that. And then it gets into this really crazy solo. And then after that solo, it just gets really, really melodic. The clean vocals come in, there's just a lot of emotion that's conveyed. And then there's these cool guitar parts, the lead guitar parts. And then it slowly fades out into this really beautiful piano piece with like strings behind it. And it just sounds really, really powerful and really emotional, just the way that the piano and the strings work together as it fades out. And I think it's just really interesting. And it's a really good song. Next song I'll talk about, track number 5, A New Beginning, which sort of starts off slow with this sort of clean guitar part, and then the main melodic riff comes in, and then it gets really heavy, and then, I mean, it's just a cool way to open the song. But what I really like about this song is the way it ends, where after the second verse, after the second chorus, where they sort of do the thing where after the 2 choruses, they sort of take the song in a whole different direction, where there's just this really melodic part, and then at the end it pulls back where the rhythm guitars are just really heavy, and then there's this melodic guitar riff on top of that, and it's just a really cool piece of guitar music, and it really gets you into it. And that's the way the drums progress in that part of the song, where it stops, pulls back, and then it like drops again and just gets really heavy. It's just a really cool progression, and I just love the way that song ends. Track number 6, Counterbalance. This is one of the longer tracks on the album. We're clocking in over 5.5 minutes, where it just progressively changes throughout the song, where it starts off like with this really cool riff, and then there's this solo really early on in the song, and then halfway through the song they have another solo which is just really pulled back and melodic, and just it pulls you right in. And then this is when the vocals get really melodic after this point, and where there's this huge part in the end where they just convey so much emotion, and then it ends with this acoustic guitar piece. I just love the way the song progresses throughout, and it's just a really, really awesome song. It's one of my favorite tracks on the album. Track number 7, Inane, which is one of the heavier numbers on this album. It just has this really heavy part in the beginning. And then this song's like 6 minutes long, and then the whole, over the second half of the song, it's like the last 4.5 minutes even, or something like that. The last like 3.5 minutes, sorry, is just all instrumental. It's just really cool how it progresses in that end part, where there's this melodic comes in, this melodic part comes in over these really heavy chugging riffs, and then it pulls back into a solo, and then another melodic part, and then it just ends with this amazing harmonization part. It's just a few chords, but it just conveys so much emotion. It's just beautiful sounding. Just the end of the song is just absolutely beautiful sounding, and it's just so calm and chilled and like just melodic compared to the earlier part of the song where it's just really heavy. And I think it's an interesting way to go about making a song where it starts off heavy and then slowly gets calmer and chilled towards the end of the song. It's just, like I said, it's just a really beautiful ending to the song. Last song I want to talk about is the final track, track number 11, When All Is Said and Done, which is another song that's really long and just changes throughout, where it starts off really heavy, and then all these other melodic parts come in. There's all these cool soloing bits, and there's lots of interesting changes in the vocals throughout, where there's heavy parts where it's just harsh vocals all the way through, and then some singing laced in, and then towards the end it's just all singing, and there's just all these cool, crazy guitar parts happening and working together. It's just a really cool way to end the album. So those are some of my personal favorite tracks on the album, and all the other tracks that I didn't mention are actually really good, and just every single song on this album is just really good. It's just those are the ones that are even more exceptional than the other ones. But I'm not saying any of the other tracks are bad on this album because they're all just really good. So let's talk about some of the actual band members here. First, we'll talk about Jon Howard on vocals, who of course is currently the only founding member left in the band, but he's just got really, really amazing vocals. I know a lot of people like to compare his vocal style to Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, but I don't see it as much as they do. I mean, there's a little bit, especially in his singing voice, where it sounds kind of like Chester, but it's got a lot more grit to his voice. And of course, his screams are way different. He can hit these really low, growly type things and mid-range screams, and he's got a really incredible high range where he just goes into these high metalcore type screams that are just like, wow, how is this guy doing that getting that high pitch with like a harsh vocal? It's just really cool how he does that. And I think he's a really great vocalist, and he just has so many cool parts throughout the song, or throughout the different songs on this album. Like Rationalize, he alternates between really low and really high, and then he's got this really melodic singing voice he has, and he also does his more grittier singing style. And I think that song really showcases his various range of vocals. Another song where it really shines is, I think, Counterbalance, where he just has these really powerful singing parts that are just conveying so much emotion. And throughout this album, his lyrical content is just fantastic. It's not like all this like emotional stuff. It's like political issues and being upset with the way the world is with violence and all this kind of stuff. And I think you can really tell that they're pissed off about these issues, and they want to vent their anger about them through this music. And I just think the lyrical topics throughout the album are really interesting, and there's all different types of issues addressed. So I gotta give Jon credit for his songwriting and for his singing. Now, Kyle McKnight and Rich Howard on guitars. There's just so many amazing guitar parts on this album. It's definitely their most melodic album so far. There's so many parts where there's cool harmonizations and just crazy solos, like on let's see, Counterbalance is a good example, where they have like the crazy sort of fast-paced solo and the more pulled back and melodic type of solo. Or then the song Inane, where they have these really cool, like, clean guitar parts mixed in with the heavy, chuggy riffs, and then the really simplistic yet really emotional, or well, emotion-conveying, harmonized part at the end of that song. It's just, there's all these cool guitar parts on the lead end of things all throughout. And then there's just these technical, genty riffs all throughout the album that are just really, really catchy, and they're really technical, and they're really interesting. Like the riff on Counterbalance, or the riff on Inane, or the riff on One Last Breath, where the riffs are just really technical, yet they're still really catchy at the same time. Marco Bressette, I'm probably butchering that name, and sorry about that, on bass. The bass, for the most part, just follows along with the guitars, but it's loud and turned up so you can actually hear it. And there are a few moments here and there where the bass does its own thing, especially in those moments like in Counterbalance or Inane, where the guitars pull back a little bit and they get clean, and then the bass is more audible, and you can hear that he's doing some different parts or different types of things from the guitars in those particular parts of the songs. And finally, George Parfitt on drums. There's lots of fast, crazy drumming, there's technical drumming, and he throws in all these cool fills throughout to keep things interesting, and that's something you really need to have in a progressive metal band. And he can do all these different rhythm changes to keep up with the crazy like riffs that are really always changing and always different that Kyle and Rich are throwing at him, and his drumming goes along really well with that, and he does all these cool changes to keep things interesting, and that's the kind of stuff you really expect to see in a progressive metal band like this one, and he does a really good job of doing that. So overall, all 5 of these guys are doing a great job, and they work really well together. Oh, my final thoughts on this album, like I said, it's their most melodic album to date since through lineup changes. Their sound changed a little bit, but this album really has those really cool melodic parts and those really cool harmonized parts that really pull you into this album, and it really sets it apart from their other albums. And I think this is a fantastic way to start off their discography. So if you're new to Threat Signal, I would start with this album because it's definitely one of their best albums, and it's really, really worth checking out. So definitely go listen to this album. It's really good. And I'll see you guys next week with the next album in their discography. And remember, if you want to see more reviews, you can subscribe and be sure to like the video if you enjoyed the video. And I'll see you guys next time.